So their currency position, they have to look at both sides, because there are societies that both import and export. When your currency goes up, your exports suffer, but your imports become cheaper. So they are working all that out. But that's the struggle in Europe. Do we or don't we? Do we have more to gain? And if they decide that they have more to gain by driving down the price of the euro, that's what they will do. And they have the muscle and the strength to do it. And the United States knows that. And that's why this thing that the Federal Reserve did was desperate. They didn't check with the Europeans. They didn't bring them in on the process. They kind of announced it. And that's why they got this reaction in which the Europeans are basically telling the United States, this is not going to work. The Europeans are in a very strong position, something which American newspapers consistently refuse to understand. The reason for that is historical again. The three major capitalist centers for a long time were the United States, Japan, and Western Europe. Each of them competed with the other. Each of them dramatically found new labor supplies to enhance their competition. The Chinese, entering this, also began doing this. The Chinese cheap labor was their own agricultural population migrating in from the outside. For the Japanese, it was spreading all over Asia to cheap regional places to produce, the Philippines, I mean, all those kinds of places. In the United States, NAFTA, Mexicans, Central Americans, and all the other people who come here. But in each of those cases, the cheap labor they found was unskilled by and large. Europe's situation is different. Europe, Western Europe, capitalist Europe, acquired a vast new pool of cheap labor by the collapse of Eastern European socialist societies. Those societies had cheap labor compared to what they were getting in Western Europe, but here's the difference. Highly educated, highly trained, highly disciplined, with heavy experience in industry. Those cheap workers bring high productivity as well as low wages. And that gives the Europeans an enormous edge. And that's going to play out over the next 20 years. If I were to bet my money, as I do, and the money of people I invest, I bet on Europe. I think they are in the best. They have lots of problems, and this could all go way otherwise than what I'm saying. But when I look at it all, and I keep doing this, I've been doing this for years now, they come out in the best position to emerge. And I think you already see the signs of it. In some way, the only Western society that has really come through this economic crisis roughly with flying colors is Germany. If you look at the statistics, it's stunning. They're carrying the rest of Europe as a whole by their extraordinary success. They are a high-tech, highly disciplined, high-wage success story. The crisis in Germany has been much milder than the one here. The one in France is less than the one here, and the one in France is a lot worse than the one in Germany. So, and Germany is the center of the new Europe. It's an enormous powerhouse anyway, and it just becomes more and more the engine of Europe. So I think what you might want to think of is taking a course in German. German is my first language, so I'm enjoying it.
You may have touched on this in other meetings in the past, but why do you think then the government did not take on the responsibility of refinancing all of these loans instead of simply giving the money to the banks, hoping that they would actually do that stimulation and refinancing?
No, but they did. They did. If you look at what the TARP program, all of the other programs, really the most impressive thing the government did was to guarantee almost all the credits. I mean, basically it went into a credit system that had seized up, frozen in 2008. Nobody was trusted. Big banks that had been doing business together for 100 years didn't trust each other for overnight loans anymore. It was impossible for an economy as dependent on credit as ours is. The seizing of credit, the fact that nobody trusted that anyone else's assets were real, could be translated into real money if they needed it to, everything, so the government basically came in and guaranteed all the loans. So that really, the government of the United States did, when you see, some of you see these numbers thrown around, that the United States government has committed, $13 trillion or 42 trillion, those numbers are not money that is being spent. That's not even money on bailouts. Those are the numbers of the guarantees. It's what the government could have to spend if all the guarantees it gave had to be paid out. Now the assumption is many of them won't, and that seems to be happening. But the biggest thing the government did, and again, allow me, because I grew up in the economics profession. I've been a professor of economics all my adult life. That means I have had to teach generations of students a load of crap you would not believe. And so for me, it is extraordinarily pleasurable to poke at it. So bear with me. Right? The private capitalist credit market collapsed, requiring the government to come in and guarantee all the debts of AIG, all the insurance policies and credit default swaps they had written, guaranteed by a stroke of Henry Paulson's pen. Guaranteed all the debts of the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two great institutions that support the housing market. Guarantee, guarantee, guarantee. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The government is the only thing that allowed credit once again to go. And on top of that, they then pumped money in. But the biggest thing they did was to provide an absolute guarantee for all these credits.
So why then all of the foreclosures and not adjust the interest rates, for example, on these existing loans that the people were not able to handle? We know that a lot of the foreclosures were actually by design of the people that were actually living in those houses to a certain extent.
Well, I think the answer to that is the culture of the United States. It was crystal clear to Paulson, Geithner, all of those people, that if the credit system seizes up, the government should come in and backstop the banks. The government should give them all the money that they need to get out of it. And as soon as the crisis passes, the government should give them back their private prerogatives. That struck them as self-evident and obvious. If there was enough extra money, they wouldn't have opposed helping people with foreclosures. They did some of that. But that's an afterthought. That's the bottom of the economy. The truth of it is, as economists, and I was trained in the same classrooms with many of these people. I know many of them because of that. I come out of the Ivy Leagues. I went to the right schools to know all these people. And I therefore know what they do know and what they don't know. But that's how they've always thought. They have nothing against poor people. They'd be happy to if you talk to them, it's only the Republicans. It's only the Republicans. Otherwise, we would be happy to give it to give some money to the foreclosed. And then when I say to them, but the economics we all learned together in the classroom says that there's just as good a reason to believe that if that amount of money and that many guarantees had given to the mass of people, money for their homes, guarantee for their debts, to see them through a hard time, the government will guarantee what you owe on your credit card, what you owe. Might that have worked? They look at me. They know that might have worked too. It just didn't occur to them. And that's a political question. The political forces weren't there to push in that direction. They pushed somewhere else, and but the beauty is, in this country, that seems normal and reasonable. So that everybody from the New York Times, well, what do you expect? But on over, and I won't mention names, to the left wing in the United States, takes as given and normal what it should never take as given and normal. Something is it's not necessary. None of this was necessary. The productivity of American workers that went up from 1820 to 1970 also went up from 1970 to 2010. For all the first period, the rising productivity helped pay for the rising wages. Why didn't the continuing rising productivity allow continuing rising wages? Because capitalists didn't have to. And the first thing they learn in business school is if you don't have to pay higher wages, don't do it. You get an A if you figure that out. That's what business is. They did what the system has them do. That's why I don't get angry at them. They do what the system has them do. If you're angry at the outcome, your problem is the system. That's why I'm not going to attack Wall Street. I find all of that childish. That's an undeveloped way of understanding what's going on. Wall Street did what Wall Street always does. Main Street, you know, when the wages didn't go up, that was every little business in Boise, Idaho doing it too. All the businesses stopped raising wages. Not the big Wall Street nasties, everybody.